Bridge to tugs, confirm position. Over.
1, position confirmed.
Copy. Stand by for mooring. Cargo deck latches secured, Craig.
All proceed to secure.
Hold it steady! Pull in the slack!
Copy that. Applying more power now.
Ropes are holding. Watch the wave!
You know those massive ships that carry pretty much everything we own across the oceans? Ever wonder who's actually steering them? Well, it's not always the captain. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a really crucial role, the second officer. This is the unsung navigator whose skill and precision literally keep global commerce moving. So, let's dive right in.
So, who is charting the course for a 400-meter container ship through the world's busiest sea lanes? You guessed it, the second officer. And let me tell you, this is a role that demands absolute precision, incredible foresight, and yeah, nerves of steel. I mean, think about it. As the ship's official navigator, the safety of a multi-million-dollar vessel and every single person on board, it all rests squarely on the accuracy of their work.
Okay, so what does being the ship's navigator actually mean today in the 21st century? It's so much more than just a person with a map and a compass. It's a legally defined role, a really complex web of duties that are standardized all over the world.
All right, let's get into the official lingo for a second. Under what's called the STCW Convention, which is basically the global rulebook for mariners, the second officer is certified as an officer in charge of a navigational watch, or OICNW for short. Now, this isn't just some fancy job title. It's a legal status. It defines their core duty and their authority when they're on the bridge.
So where do they fit in the hierarchy? Well, on the ship's chain of command, the second officer is technically fourth in line, right after the master, chief officer, and third officer. But, and this is a really key distinction, when it comes to the actual navigation, they are the senior specialist. In that one absolutely critical duty, they outrank the third officer.
And you can see how this plays out in the real world. Take this quote from the Safety Manual of Maersk, one of the biggest shipping companies on the planet. It explicitly tasks the second officer with preparing the passage plans. So think of them as the architect of the entire journey. They draw up the blueprints, and the master is the one who gives that final, crucial sign-off.
Perfect example of this is SOLAS Chapter 5, Regulation 34. Now, SOLAS stands for the safety of life at sea, and this specific regulation, it establishes a legally binding, absolutely flawless blueprint for every single voyage. I mean, it leaves virtually zero room for guesswork. Just look at the sheer level of detail they require here. The plan has to account for really complex shipping routes, it's got to guarantee sufficient sea room, and crews have to actively anticipate all known navigational hazards, not to mention adverse weather conditions. And on top of all that, it requires strict adherence to marine environmental protection measures. So on paper, this industry is meticulously controlled. Every single potential risk is calculated and supposedly mitigated.
Now, that passage plan, it's not just drawing a line on a chart, not even close. It is a super meticulous 4-phase process, and it's mandated by the SOLAS Convention. That's the International Treaty for Safety of Life at Sea. First, there's appraisal, where you gather every piece of data imaginable. Then comes planning, where you actually map out the route. After that, execution by the whole bridge team, and finally, constant monitoring to make absolutely sure the ship stays on that planned track.
To see how these massive regulations actually translate to daily life, let's zoom in on the second officer. They're the ones actually drawing up that incredibly complex passage plan we just talked about. They're out there updating the charts. They're maintaining the ship's medical locker and literally providing first aid. They assist the chief officer with some seriously heavy cargo and ballast operations. And on top of all of that, they're standing on the bridge, keeping the 12 to 4 navigational watch. Twice a day. The sheer scope of their daily responsibility is honestly just staggering. And wrapped right up in those duties is managing the GMDSS, or the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. Now, this isn't just a regular radio. It's an automated safety lifeline that uses satellites and digital selective calling technology. Bottom line, if the ship goes down, this is the thing that calls for help. And the second officer is the one tasked with making absolutely sure this complex system is functioning flawlessly every single day. And here's what that actually looks like in practice. It is a highly exact, incredibly repetitive procedure. You click the menu, click maintenance, click self-tests, select the DSC loop, and check all. Day in and day out, the second officer has to maintain this super strict discipline right alongside all their other medical, navigational, and cargo duties. It's a lot.
And when the ship gets to port, they're often at the very back, supervising the super important mooring operations.
So how do you even get a job with this much trust and responsibility? Well, the journey to becoming a second officer isn't random. It's a very highly structured, very standardized climb up the professional ladder at sea.
The path is pretty clear-cut. You start out as a deck cadet. Then, after getting certified, you become an officer of the watch. That's usually as a third officer, where your main focus is on safety equipment. But the promotion to second officer, that's a huge leap. Suddenly you're taking on senior operational duties, and you're officially on the direct path towards becoming a chief officer and one day, the master of a vessel.
And this whole progression is governed by some seriously strict regulations. You have national authorities, like the UK's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, whose job it is to make sure every single officer meets these demanding international standards. We're talking years of sea time, tons of training, and passing a whole series of incredibly challenging written and oral exams. It's no joke.
So let's really break down the difference here. It's interesting because both the third and second officer hold the same base certificate, but their day-to-day responsibilities are worlds apart. The third officer is all about safety equipment, lifeboats, fire gear, but the second officer? They're entrusted with navigation, communications, and medical care. These are duties that directly ensure the safe passage of the entire vessel.
All right, let's move beyond the official job description. It's time to talk about the practical realities of the role, the pressure, the pay, and the really unique challenges that come with this kind of life at sea.
Naturally, the pay reflects the high stakes of the job. For example, on a tanker, a second officer can typically expect to earn somewhere between $4,500 and $6,500 a month. Now, that figure changes depending on the ship type and the company, but it's a big jump from what a junior officer makes. And that really tells you how much value is placed on their specialized skills and their senior responsibilities.
And the numbers on that paycheck, they don't just happen by accident. They're dictated by some pretty strict factors. The specialization of the vessel, like whether it's a standard bulk carrier or an offshore construction vessel, plays a really huge role. Plus, holding rare certifications for things like liquefied natural gas or working in absolutely brutal environments like the North Sea or the Arctic, that can significantly boost a seafarer's pay.
The whole rhythm of their life is dictated by the famous 12 to 4 watch. What does that mean? It means they're on the bridge from noon to 4 in the afternoon. And then again, in the dead of night, from midnight until 4 in the morning. They are literally the eyes and ears of the ship while most of the crew is fast asleep.
And that demanding schedule brings us to a really critical issue in the whole maritime industry. It's this constant, draining battle against fatigue. It's a fundamental conflict between the rules you see on paper and the actual reality of the workload.
So international law, specifically the Maritime Labor Convention, is crystal clear on this. It mandates a minimum of 10 hours of rest in any 24-hour period and at least 77 hours over a week. These rules aren't just suggestions. They are designed to be a critical safety barrier to stop accidents that happen because people are just too tired.
But here's the thing, there's often a huge gap between the rules and reality. Research has pointed to this widespread phenomenon called the normalization of deviance. So what is that? It's basically where the immense pressure of the job, you've got your 8-hour watch plus hours of passage planning and paperwork, it leads officers to just record the legally required rest hours on paper, even when they're actually working much, much longer.
And the weight of all this responsibility is just immense. A single mistake, a tiny miscalculation in the passage plan, a missed update on a chart, a momentary lapse of concentration on watch, any of those things can lead to a grounding, a collision, or a massive pollution event. And for the second officer, an error like that carries not just professional consequences, but severe legal and sometimes even criminal liability.
Which brings us to one last big question. The ship's bridge is changing, fast. We're seeing more and more automation, more smart systems. So what does the future actually hold for this role? Is the human navigator going to become more of a systems manager, or will their fundamental skills, seamanship, judgment, remain just as critical as ever in this new digital age? Honestly, that's a question the entire industry is trying to navigate right now.
To pull the rug out from under those pristine rules and decent paychecks and actually dive below the surface of our iceberg. 98. That is the number of hours a seafarer can legally be scheduled to work in a single week. Seriously? While standard international labor norms aim for a 48-hour work week, the maritime sector operates under exceptions in the STCW regulations that permit a staggering 98-hour work week.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The regulations legally accept up to a 14-hour workday with absolutely no requirement for a weekly day off. Remember our second officer, the person totally responsible for meticulous passage planning, medical care, and testing the ship's distress systems? Yeah, they are legally allowed to do all of that incredibly complex, safety-critical work on virtually no rest, day after grueling day. Unsurprisingly, academic research on maritime fatigue has really heavily criticized this. As one study explicitly notes, current standards detached labor rights from workers' human nature and attached them directly to sectoral interests. The scientific consensus is absolutely clear here. These incredibly long hours completely ignore the profound impact of fatigue on a human being's cognitive performance and their ability to operate a vessel safely.